Hi, I'm Bhumika and I'm the host for today's event. And besides Pavithra, who will be taking the stage, and I think we're good to start and people can join in a bit later. So, quick introduction about PyLadies Amsterdam. We're a bunch of coders who really like to code and want to spread the joy of coding through workshops and also try to improve the gender imbalance in the tech community. With that, we thought, why not start with open source, get more people to contribute. And we have Pavithra, who is also a contributor to Bokeh and Wikimedia. And we thought, why not have someone with a lot of experience give a hands on workshop? So, Pavithra, the stage is all yours. Take it away.
Thank you. I like that. Spread the joy of coding. I like how you said that.
Thank you.
So, yes, today's workshop is on contributing to open source software. Um, I have designed almost these slides to be very minimal, and it's an introduction. It's a very beginner-friendly workshop, and I want this to be as interactive as we can. We can try to make it happen. I mean, it's virtual, so everything is going to be through our chat platform or however, if we can have folks talk. I don't know if it gets chaotic or whatever, but I want this to be as interactive as possible. There are a lot of question breaks, a lot of checkpoints. In fact, like whenever you see a yellow box come up, it will come up. It's like I want you to maybe type in some answers or unmute and talk, or try it yourself, try your hands on whatever the task is, go ahead and do it. And at the end of this workshop, let's hope all of us at least make one PR, start our contributing journey, start our open source journey, get involved in at least one community, and at least dip our feet in the water, right? So that's all is the aim of this workshop. I want this to be just chilling. Let's have fun for the next 2 hours. So let's get started. Here's how it's going to flow. First, we'll start by introducing what open source is. Let's think about some background and a high-level overview. Then why we should contribute, because everyone needs a purpose. Then we'll go into the ABCs, how exactly you can start contributing. And lastly, 3 and 4 are kind of in line. As we learn about each step, you'll also be following along. So that's how it's going to go. So before we get started, I just wanted to get an understanding of where you all are in terms of if anybody has contributed before, how much you know about open source software, how much you know about Git, GitHub, just overall as a collective. So if y'all could just take a moment to type in the chat box. Let's start with open source. How many of you have contributed before? Are you a beginner? Are you a maintainer? Are you a regular contributor? Have you made 1 or 2 PRs? Just briefly. I'll open the chat box. Yep. We have around 15 participants, so yeah, I'm hoping at least. I'm hoping everybody answers actually. Contributed issues and PRs before. Okay. That's interesting. Do you have any beginners here who have not contributed or haven't heard about open source before? Never contributed, but I'm familiar with GitHub. Okay, awesome. Okay. Got it, Sonakshi. So I'll try to keep this pretty beginner friendly. Okay, so let's dive in. I'm Pavithra. I am currently interning as a data science evangelist at Coiled. Coiled is a startup. It works on task-based tools and products. I'm a part of the core team at Bokeh. So Bokeh is an open source project. It's a visualization library. It's an interactive visualization library. I'm also an org administrator for GSOC and Outreachy with Wikimedia Foundation. GSOC and Outreachy are open source programs. We'll talk about them later, like towards the end, but these programs are designed to get more folks into open source software. I'm also a past Season of Talks technical writer. This is like 2 years back with Wikimedia again. And lastly, I'm pursuing an undergraduate degree in computer science from India. So it's very cold here in India right now. In North India right now, yeah. All right, so let's start with what is open source software? What is free and open source software actually? So there are two parts to this, right? One is free software and second is open source software. So the free software, it is not in terms of price, it's more in terms of software licenses and freedom to distribute, freedom to share. It's a lot more, I don't say, not political, it's more like a law side. That's why instead of free, sometimes you hear LIBRE. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm going to say libre, but that's freedom, like freedom to share. That's what free stands for. But it's also, of course, price-wise free. And lastly, secondly, it's open source. Open source meaning the code is public. Anybody can see it. So that's the definition of the terms. So as I mentioned, this is free to modify, share, and study. You can build products with open source software and sell it, which is completely okay. It's completely legal, right? So free and open source software is just everything's out there. It's for you to go ahead, play with it, and do interesting things with, right? So this is the yellow box I was talking about. So now that you have an idea about what free and open source software is, can you think about, firstly, is it important just in general in the world? And if it is, why is it important? Just go ahead, share your answers. If anybody wants to unmute and answer, that's also good. I'm going to just wait a few minutes for at least 1 or 2 people to answer. Because I really want folks to think about this, because a lot of times we just think about the high level stuff, right? But I really want to just take a few moments to think about why exactly is this important? Why should we contribute? We'll get to, but just what is the significance of free and open source software? Anybody? Yep. Bhumika says it's important to allow freedom to develop software as a community. Yeah, that's right. Anybody else? So if you open your phone today and just look at any application, right? On some level, there is a free and open source dependency, because just imagine if, for example, Twitter, if they had to write every piece of code themselves, it's very difficult to build a product. So at some level, like maybe the language they're using, right? Python, it's an open source package. It's an open source language, an open source project. So they are using Python to build something else. A lot of fundamental, a lot of tools that make up like the digital infrastructure of the internet, like just in general everywhere, is usually free and open source. It's important for when people modify, there's a lot more innovation that happens. It gives freedom. People can learn. It helped aid the technology revolution, because if everything was behind a paywall, if everything was proprietary, even teaching and learning, there's a barrier there. There's an economic barrier there. There's a social barrier there. But keeping this free also enables sharing. All of us now learn via PyLadies, right? So we can learn Python pretty much anywhere on the web. That's because it's free and open source. So there's a lot. It's very important. Like it is, as I said, it's the backbone of our digital infrastructure. And almost anything you're using on the internet on some level depends on free and open source software. And some softwares you might have heard of are Linux, Mozilla, Wikipedia, C, Python, And if you can name a few, I'm gonna open it again. Just anything you can think of, one or two. Yes, ladies, yes. When I say digital infrastructure, it's also things like PIP and Conda and NPM, things we don't really, we just use them. We don't think about who's building them. So these are all, they go back. There is somebody volunteering the time to maintain all of these tools. Jupyter, yes, that is open source. Signal, yes, correct. Awesome. So we know of open source softwares. Now let's talk about why we should contribute to them. First off, what's in it for you? You can build your skills, right? It's a real world project. Uh, you get to work on all aspects of the code. You get to write tests. You get to work with CI/CD, everything, and it is going to build your skills, of course. Next is you get to be a part of a community. So PyLadies is a community, and we know why communities are important. It gives us a sense of it's a safe space. We can learn, share, and the open source community is like it's a very broad community. PyLadies form a part of this community, but we have a lot more, like the Linux community. We have a whole bunch of people there. We have the Kubernetes community. We have a lot of people there. The Python community. We have a lot of open source Wikimedia. So these are in some way independent, but they all come under this open source umbrella. So, and everybody I've met in the open source community is nice. So being a part of this community itself, it's a nice feeling. You get to network with people. You get to learn from each other. And lastly, open source software needs you. It needs us. It needs individuals because open source software is underfunded. All of us know that. We need people to maintain this because having something as important, for example, Jupyter, just take it. We have a big team maintaining it, but imagine if it was just one or two people maintaining this, right? How many of us depend on it? Helping them out, and it's also a volunteer thing. So we cannot expect just some one person to take the burden of maintaining some really big tool or software. So it needs us. In that sense, it also needs us as PyLadies. It needs more diversity, right? So these are at least the top three things that come to my mind when I think about why we should contribute. So I read this book very recently. It's a very small book. It's like a 100-page book. So this talks about, it's called Roads and Bridges by Nadia. It talks about the history of free and open source software. In fact, history of free software and open source software and how these came about and what are the political origins of these. There's a lot going on. It talks about the challenges. It talks about sustainability. So I would encourage all of you to at least, read a few chapters. It's a very interesting and fascinating read. I hadn't thought about open source software in a way, in a historical sense, like what is the significance, how many years it's been here, and how many people make this happen. That is covered in this book. So
Pavithra,
we
your
talked about
network,
why you should contribute, what is open source software.
we lost you in the previous sentence. So could you repeat that maybe?
I was talking about roads and bridges, and then I just mentioned I recommend folks to go through this, and I just thought we'll move forward. We've talked about what is open source software, why you should contribute. So let's move on to how to contribute. Right, so overall, high level, we pick a project, any project, then we think about how you can contribute. There are a lot of different ways to contribute. It's not just code. There are many ways you can contribute. And then we start small, start with one or two small issues, and then we talk about how we can stay involved and how we can continue working on this. So first is picking a project. Can you all still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Okay, awesome. So
I'll let you know or interrupt you if there are any issues with the internet.
Okay, thank you. So here's where the session gets a lot more hands-on. So all of my talking, it's almost done. So here's where I'm going to give like 5 to 10 minute break after each of these points so that you can take some time to explore. All right. So first is picking a project. All of you will be picking a project in like 1 or 2 minutes. And what I feel is if you want to start contributing to a project, start with the project that you already use, right? Think about one project that you've used in all of your personal project or work or wherever, and a project you're familiar with so that you can jump in. And secondly, a project you're excited about. So, as I mentioned, open source software, it's slightly self-driven. It's a voluntary thing, right? So unless you're excited about it, you're not going to have the drive to continue working. So these are just my 2 things to keep in mind. And I want you to go and explore. I saw this GitHub repository with many projects listed. So you can use this as a reference. But I just wanted to take some time, take 5 minutes or so, and just go through your past week's activities, right? Just look at what you've used and start with that project. So if you don't find any good project to start with, you can start with Bokeh. So, and I'll be demoing with Bokeh today, so you can also follow along with me. But I encourage you to go ahead and pick any project you want. So Bokeh is always like a fallback for you. Or you can work with Bokeh and some other projects simultaneously. You can multitask. So here I'm going to take like 5 minutes. Let me actually set a timer. Go ahead. So if you pick the project, just let me know in the comments. I think I'm watching too much YouTube. I just said comments instead of chat box. Let's go. It's an interesting repo. I think I found out about this from Hacktoberfest.
Yeah, this is a very interesting collection with first issues. It's really nice. Yeah. I think for me, Bokeh and maybe also Jupyter notebooks sound very interesting because I use Jupyter notebooks day in, day out.
There are a lot of nice people in the Jupyter community.
Okay. So what inspired you to take Bokeh besides just the usage? What else spurred you into Bokeh?
Oh, so I actually started working with Bokeh. I didn't start the project. I started.
We lost your audio. Oh, your video.
Did you lose me for a bit?
Yep, Yep.
Yeah, here. It does. So I think
We can still
okay,
hear
you're
you.
back.
Your video is a bit frozen. Yeah, you're back now.
I think this is gonna happen a little. Just let me know
It's
if
okay.
my audio also goes off. I think with the screen sharing, it it might be shaky. Okay. So I think about a year back, I attended PyCon India. So that before that, I had contributed to Wikimedia mostly, and I really liked the Python community overall. So I was just looking into how to get started, where I can contribute, and that's when Brian Vanderwey, he's the project lead for Bokeh. So he tweeted saying, he's willing to mentor somebody who wants to, get started with Bokeh in general. So and I just jumped on the opportunity mostly. So he's been mentoring me, guiding me through, yeah, for the past year almost. That's
That's
how
a
I got started with Bokeh. It's not no, it's a I think it's not like the general or normal way people get into open source, but yeah, it's been fun.
I think any way that works is a good way. So.
I agree. Yeah.
And Sonakshi has a question for a recommendation in the chat. So she wants to build data applications for relationship, diet, lifestyle diseases like diabetes. So she's looking for a recommendation to support this.
Can you
Any
recommend me a project
suggestions?
on Bokeh to support this purpose? I'm not sure I understand. So with Bokeh, you can build like dashboards and like interactive applications. Is that what you're asking? Because Bokeh in general will support it. Or if you're looking especially for dashboarding, you can also check out the Hall of Use project. But I don't. Or are you asking if you can use something else with Bokeh?
You can maybe unmute yourself and just clarify.
Hi, ladies. Yeah, can you hear me clearly?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, actually, I really don't know what I would like to do, but I think there are shiny applications. So there is where I got the inspiration to yeah, try my hands on that, because I think it's most interesting, especially with because as a nutrition scientist. Yeah, that's the correct wording, I think. We have our challenges lie in decision making. So visualizations are, yeah, we can, are key in my work, I have to say. So I work as a SAS programmer. So that's why I know is into R and Python. And we would like to, yeah, get stronger in these open source technologies to, yeah, contribute in our work with visualizations. And yeah, so that's why I was wondering if it's also possible with Python.
It is, of course.
What are the possibilities actually for beginners?
You can use Bokeh to build
Okay.
dashboards. So as I mentioned, you can check out Hall of Views and panel.
Yeah, I see panel on your website. Yeah.
So I think you can just maybe check out the docs and see which one works for you. Because Bokeh,
Okay.
I have a feeling it's a lot more. It's for exploratory visualizations, interactive in that sense. But Hall of Views and panel, they have matured a lot, and we personally feel very confident recommending them for dashboarding and dashboard creations. In fact, you can actually check out some showcases if you go to.
Okay.
Right. I'll share the link.
Yeah, thanks.
So we have folks building some really cool stuff here. So if any of these help you out, you can maybe get some inspiration here.
Yeah, great.
And I think a lot of these are not directly Bokeh use cases. So they also have some holodeos and panel and everything.
Okay.
What's happening
Yeah.
there? So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I hope you have some feedback. If it doesn't, let me know, or we can continue with Bokeh. So the next step is to learn about different ways to contribute, right? Generally, I feel we have you can write code, of course, so you can help with development, fix issues, or develop new features, everything. And the second is, but that also needs some time commitment, right? Just normal development work. So I feel the easiest way, or like one thing all of us can do, is help with support questions. So a lot of people who are new to the project usually have a lot of questions. It may be on Stack Overflow or whichever forum the project uses. So if you use the project and if you're pretty familiar with it, you can go ahead and start answering those questions. That is a huge help to all the maintainers. So that's also a way to contribute. Third is testing. So nobody's going to say no to more tests. Every project needs more tests. If you think it's something you're interested in, definitely go ahead and contribute tests. And lastly, it's data science. So here what I mean is, for example, Bokeh. We have a website, we have a discourse forum I just showed you. So there's a lot of data here. It will be nice to, analyze the data and see what kind of questions folks are asking, what is the demographic, what kind of resources can we build to help these people better. So that's the kind of data science I'm talking about. That's also very helpful. It's not like nothing like a big priority, and maintainers are often stuck in, just the day-to-day issues and everything. So if you're interested in data science and want to help out, that's also a good avenue. So besides code, if you're coding in your day job and you don't want to code after that, you can help write some documentation, because that's also something. Nobody's going to say no to more docs. Right? We need a lot more documentation. And design. So it's sort of counterintuitive, but I think most open source projects will really appreciate design help. You need designs for just general presentations, or for blog posts, right? Making it visually nice. So we don't there's a lot of design requirements with the project. So if it's just something you're going to try out, definitely go ahead and contribute. And lastly, some admin work. So I've used the term admin very vaguely. So what I mean here is like project management things, the day-to-day functioning of the project, things like making sure the meeting notes are there, all the meetings are set, the calendar, like documenting the processes, like decision making, how do you do that? All of that comes under some admin work, right? Outreach comes under admin work. Go ahead, going out and spreading the word about the project. If there is some new feature, new release, or just making sure the community knows about your project and all your users, they get the latest developments. Fundraising. So another slightly overlooked part of contributing. So every project needs funds, because servers, hosting, there's just a lot of expenses with the project. And sometimes when you have like a breaking issue you need to solve, sometimes you just want some developer to be paid to work on something. It's funds are it's required. So if that's something you have some experience with outside of code, it's nobody's going to say no to that contribution. And general project management stuff, as I mentioned, meeting notes and stuff. I think I've covered most of the points here, but there are a lot of other ways to contribute. These are almost universal, but I know of projects that might require help with legal things, or help with licenses and things like that. So there are a lot of different ways you can contribute, even if it's not writing code. But I think most people here want to write code. So today I'm going to be demoing a documentation code-ish issue. So let's move on. This will be our second bullet point, right? So what we'll be doing is exploring the repository. So we'll be taking like around 10 minutes after this. So whichever project you chose, you're going to go ahead and just explore. Look at the code repository, look at the issue tracker, just at a high level, try to get an understanding of, where the project is headed, what's happening, and what it is. And the documentation, look at just try to find out the contributing docs, how you can start contributing the developer docs, and look for chat forums. So almost all the projects will have some place they use, like some tool or just somewhere they are having all of their discussions, right? Try to find out that. So that's the next task you have. So we're going to take around 5 to 10 minutes to do that. And after that, I'll be talking through Bokeh's repository, website, and chat forums. Yeah, I think we can take about 5 to 10 minutes. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah. Also, just while Pavithra was talking about ways to contribute besides code, I remember that. So I started with just internationalization of code. So just a lot of documentation does not even exist in a lot of languages. So even if you start with something that simple, it can make a lot of difference. So if you want to start really small, that's another way to go.
Agree 100%, especially in Wikimedia, right? Translating is just, it's a big part of contributing docs. Let me see if I can. There should be a how to contribute. Been a while. It's a big part of contributing.
We also have a question in the regarding contributions to data science. So maybe you can elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I've shown you our discourse, right? We have a lot of, so this is like a support forum where, okay, is my internet slow? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you and see you. So.
Okay, I'll just wait for this to load then. So by data science, I mean, so it's mostly just trying to understand the users. We have data in the form of support questions on Discourse. It's what kind of questions folks are asking, who is answering, like when they're asking the questions, like things like that. We have a lot of data here. We have some data about our website visitors, where they're visiting from, how long they stay, what do they look for. So all of that, we have a lot of data there. So maybe just trying to analyze and thinking about how we can support them better. That's what I meant by data science. And on a broader level, it can also be just, if it's a scientific Python tool, just uh, creating examples and demos, that's also somewhere data science related. So you can also help with that. Okay. So how many people are gonna work with Bokeh here? And how many of you have any other project you're working with? If you have any other project, just maybe drop, just let me know. Just drop the name of the project in the chat box. Nice, okay. So let me go on. Let me talk about Bokeh for a little bit more. So first thing I mentioned was the code repository. So you would have noticed at least most Python projects, they're all hosted on GitHub. It is one of the more popular code repositories. But we have many other repositories, including GitLab, which I think is the second most famous. We also have Gerrit, also a Git-based tool. And we also have something called Fabricator. So this is a screenshot of how Gerrit looks. And here's a Fabricator repo. I wanted to mention something here that I'm forgetting. Yeah, so sometimes, at least tools like Gerrit, they have a learning curve, right? So if the project uses that, it might take you a few days to get the hang of how the project operates and what's their code review process like. But mostly, if it's on GitHub, I think most of us are familiar with how it works. And Bokeh is hosted on GitHub, so today that's not something we need to worry about. Second was documentation. So most projects are going to have their documentation on some website, which will be linked from their landing page or something. Just sometimes it's also on the project wikis. It's on the repository itself. There is just a folder which has some documentation files. And this documentation will include the user guide, it'll include tutorials. And what we're looking for is like developer documentation or a file called contributing.md that from there you can start working towards whatever you want to do. And lastly, communication. So when you start contributing, you're going to run into problems. And you need to reach the developers somewhere. So mostly the issue tracker itself is a good place, but sometimes projects also, they tend to use some other tools to just help and aid communication. Some popular tools are Slack, Discourse, Zulip, Gitter. Sometimes projects may also use different tools for different things. For example, at Bokeh, we use Discourse as a support forum. And For development discussions, we usually move that to Slack, and sometimes it's just on the issue tracker itself. So most of the projects would have documented this somewhere that you might have to find. But even if you mess up, it's all right. Someone's going to correct you and point you in the right direction anyway. So I wanted to demo this with Bokeh to show you what all is there. As I mentioned, landing page usually has docs, which will have some developer documentation. That's your starting point. It'll have a tutorial, a community page, which right now it moves to our support forum, and the repository, which will always be linked. So our repository is on GitHub. This is github.com/bokeh/bokeh. So next step, now that we have picked the project, we've looked at the project, explored it, we start small. We look at where we can contribute. And the first step is maybe looking at finding an issue to start contributing. So I think the next step is, the workflow. Generally, we find an issue, you research the issue, you finish, you make a PR and you iterate. And the first time you start, you probably also need to build your environment where you want to work on that issue, right? So next task is for you to just, whichever project you chose, go ahead and look for an issue you want to start with. And I'd suggest you start with something called the good first issues or beginner friendly issues. They usually have tags. So that's a good place to start. And I think let's go to a good first issue. I think I'll take up this task. And if you're looking for a task, this one is a good task. So recently, so we've been revamping our docs, right? We had a technical writer come in for a season of docs, and they created some style guidelines to make the documentation more consistent. So now we are going through each of our documentation pages to, just make them in line with the writing style guides. I think it's a very friendly and a good place to start. So if you don't have any other issue in mind or any other project in mind, I would suggest you start with this. But I also wanted to just go through the issue tracker, not just look for an issue, but also get a feel for where the project is headed in terms of issues. For example, Bokeh, we have a 2.3 release coming up. So right now, okay, maybe good first issues are usually self-contained, but in general, if you look, you'll see some direction where the project is headed, what are the priorities and stuff. So maybe just try to get that high-level overview as well. So we'll take a few minutes here. So you just start with an issue, and I'd actually like you to just let me know whichever issue you pick. Here, I'd like this workshop to turn into more like a sprint, so you can work on it. The fact that all of us are here can help each other out if you get stuck somewhere. So yeah, maybe just take a few moments to search for an issue and actually set your development environment and start working. The next step will be setting up Bokeh's environment. So if you want to jump ahead, you can. Or if you're starting with a different project, just go ahead and start setting up your environment. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm right here. I'll also have to point out something here. That is, let me go to the developer docs. That's getting set up. Okay. So Bokeh usually follows a issue PR workflow where even if you find some mistake and you just want to create a PR, it's usually recommended that you first create an issue, describe what's happening, and then create a associated PR. So projects might have some, some of these informal slash formal workflows associated with them. They'll mostly be documented. If they're like super strict, they will be documented in your contributing.md or your developer documentation somewhere. So maybe just keep an eye out for those as well. I mentioned design earlier. So I don't think I can find the issue here, but Bokeh has a bunch of themes. So that's also a design related issue where, creating, here's the issue, creating more default themes. Any questions so far or any thoughts? How's it going? Should we speed it up? Is this time limit enough for you to explore, for you to find an issue? Have you found an issue? Are you working through this or are you just listening? What's happening? Still looking at issues and trying to pick one. Okay. Looking to the issue list. All right. We'll take a few more minutes to do that. Actually, I'm just gonna, let's take a proper break then. Like okay, I'm in a half-hour time zone. So I don't know what the Amsterdam time is, but maybe 8 minutes from now.
Okay, so that will be 7:30, 19:30.
Maybe just also get some water or, yeah. And let's start working on some issues. Thanks for joining. Have a good night. I'll just turn my video off, I think until 7:30 is that right? I'll get my water. So do we have issues picked out?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so one thing.
From my end, yes.
What about the others? Do you all have any issues picked out? Otherwise, I mentioned, I think I'd shared an issue, 10539, as a good place to start. So if you haven't picked out, I think you can go with that. So I'll be demonstrating setting up the environment, both for even documentation. So that's probably a good issue to start. But if you have picked out an issue, just let me know. Before we move on, I just wanted to ask what systems are y'all on? Anybody on Windows, Mac, Linux? Just which systems are y'all using? Windows, okay. Okay, I think it will be fun. Let's go. One thing I want to note here is, if you see Bokeh's default branch is 2.3. So the workflow you follow is, so the main branch is, that's where our release, the latest release cut was. So 2.3, like all the new things you want to develop after that goes into this default branch. That's basically it. But I think most projects will have default as main or master. So maybe I just wanted to make a note of that. The next step is setting up the environment. So because I had mentioned default is now to 2.3 and we have some big fixes coming to 2.3, the current documentation, so are getting set up. This is outdated. So I'm going to be following this setup, going from the 2.3 branch. It's almost the same, just small differences like npm 7. Otherwise, things will fail. So that's about it. Let's go then. First thing is just cloning the repository, forking and cloning. If this is your first time, I think most of you said you know how to work with GitHub. So first, you start by forking it here. I've already forked it, so that just creates your own copy of the repository. So you start there and then you clone your forked repository. I did it beforehand because I'm already having internet issues. Didn't want to stress my bandwidth too much. Here, right? Let's do this. I think we can just close that one for now and clear this. So I've already cloned the repository. Next is, I don't think you can see this, right? Is this better?
Yep, it's much better now.
First things, content and create. I think you can just go ahead and run these as such. I've already done that, so I can just activate it. Again, did it so that my internet doesn't stress out. But if you just, from the root, if you just run content create, it'll create an environment for you called BKDEV. Pretty straightforward. Let's just run the command. Let's go to Bokeh.js and npm 7. going to skip configuring Git for now and run. Oh, to run this from the root directory. We do a fresh build. Just following the instructions here as this. For most issues, you wouldn't, not for most, for some very rare issues, you won't need to create an environment. If it's just fun file fix, you can always just do it on GitHub itself. Or if you're just raising PR, raising issues and discussing, again, no need to set up an environment. But if you really want to, commit to contributing, definitely go ahead and do it. I'm gonna open this. Is the issue I picked. I'm live coding, so I wanted to make sure I picked the easiest issue I could. It's going to take a while. Awesome. We built it. So I'm going to go ahead and test out. This should show me 2.3. If you're doing it right, this information should be displayed for you as well. And then let's see Bokeh in action, because why not? So what my problem is, we need to remove the table of content, DOC trees, from release and installation.rst because apparently they are redundant. So let me go, this is probably a little too zoomed in, but yeah, okay. So that's my Bokeh install, right? Okay. I'm gonna try to take this as step by step as possible. When you see something like this, you probably, if you're new to the project, you probably don't have an idea where these files are located or what. So first step, if you have no idea where to start, go ahead and just drop a comment there saying, hey, I am stuck here. I don't know where to go from here. So just help out. Somebody will reach out to you. Or just, this is release.rst. I can just search for it, right, in this repository and see where it is, what's happening. Oh, just code. I know where it is. So I'm going to try to not know where it is. Interesting. I can't find it directly. That's very interesting. How about I do installation? Here there's an installation.rst. So you can find it. That's weird. Okay. Oops. So usually, because it's a docs issue, the issue was tagged as a docs issue. I lost the issue, didn't I? It's okay. This was it. it says component docs. So because I can always go and check out where the documentation is. It's being built using Sphinx. So I can just go to the repository, see. It's going to be in source docs. We have a releases.rst here. I think installation allows, this is what they're talking about, these two files. And what I need to do is just remove the DOC trees. So I'm going to go find those in my repository. Yeah, Sphinx here. Source docs. This file and installation. Let's just make this. And let's do that. Yeah. I think in this release, installation.rst was moved to first steps. As I said, we had a huge docs revamp. So that's where that happened. So it's no longer present in installation.rst. We can just let this be and just remove it here. This bit. Do I have a red link? I am taking all of these out, right? Yep. That's all I need to do. But we need to wait for our build to complete. I can't just make the change directly. I need to make a new branch to do this. Oh, this is just, but before I do that, I need to first also set up my documentation, build my documentation from scratch. So I had given you the link, right, to our dev guide. We did our setup completely. We saw Bokeh in action. Next should be my documentation. So I'm just going to build the docs. This is what I was talking about. So new style new style guidelines. So any of you working on the task guide I shared earlier. So this is your guide. What I need to do to build the docs is just cd and so this is just an environment variable you need to set Google API key for, oh, what's happening? Try again. I think this will complete. So yeah, let's wait for the new source files to build.
We also have some questions in the chat. So yeah,
Yes.
while we're waiting for this, you can also just look at those.
Oh, great. Reads from your GitHub. Yeah, so I cloned my fork of Bokeh. So I cloned this repository. Which IDE are you using? I am using Visual Studio Code. So So if you want to work on tests, you would go into the testing developer docs and you can build it there. And I'm just following these because we had some breaking changes, and following the developer guide given on the website, it will not work. You're gonna face some issues. I think we also have better documentation for Windows. It should be out like pretty soon, I think. I did not attend the meeting today, so I don't know what happened. But yeah, 2.3, it's coming out very fast. Our docs take a while to build. It takes a minute or two. But I just wanted to do it once to show how it's done. Before we start contributing, we'll probably just normal workflow. We'll create a new branch just for this change so that you can create a PR off of that branch. Build finish. So now let's serve it. There. If I go to the docs here, I'll find the correct set of guidelines. 9.7. Yeah. So you can't see the DOC tree here. What was it? Releases.rsd, right? So I think so the theme we are following, it's a custom-ish theme on top of PyLadies Sphinx theme. So it's not visible here directly, but if I try to serve these documents with any other Sphinx theme, I can pretty much see that that's the reason why we're removing the DOC trees. So anyway, let me just exit from here. And why is there a change? Okay, wait, we can go back to that. Let's create a new branch. I can't see this. Wait. Oh. What are you waiting to load? Why can't the TOC tree? Oh, it could be. I just was waiting so that you can see the documentation being built locally. That's all. So now I can move this, right, and save it. That should be all. I think that's that's not it. Just that's what we did. Oh. Okay. I'm just gonna push, let's see. Okay, wait. Where is my origin? Just so. Should be it then. I should be talking you through this, but okay. So we just removed the TOC tree from this file, committed the changes, pushed the changes, and maybe creating a PR. There should be some place I can. So as I mentioned, all pull requests must have an associated issue in the tracker. If there isn't one, please go open one. So that's just general workflow. So you do have an issue. So these two do not apply. Just leave them as is. Number is 10465. Good, I guess. That's it's called releases only, right? Cool. And let's just oh, I made a typo there. Nice. It should be remove So that's it. I've created a PR. So the CI will run. Some maintainer will see it. They might ask what about the next file, or I don't know. If this is okay, they'll approve it. But we'll first we have to wait for the CI build to run. It just checks if everything is right. This was just a simple basic PR. I think y'all can start, or if you're already doing, maybe continue. And let me know if you need any help with whatever you're all doing. I just wanted to do a quick demo.
Yeah, that demo really made us realize how easy it is. So, yeah, it's a very good motivation to start.
So honestly, there are like a lot of small things we need to get fixed. This was just one file change. We have a lot more of these things. For example, I think all the documentations, they need the citation to be changed. That's something I saw recently. Just small things like that, or like those are one file changes, right? When you go to the docs, when you start building, the developer docs, or if you're just using the library, if you see some mistake there, or if you think something needs to be added there, those are just small PRs you can make anytime. So there's that. But if you really want to start contributing, I think most other issues, they will not be these one page or small fixes. But I think that's the fun of it. You can explore, learn new things, and see where to go. This is going to take a while, at least 10 to 15 minutes. But that was just a simple basic PR. And as for introduction to start contributing, like that's basically it. That's the general and the most yeah, that's mostly what you'll be doing anyway. The rest, like y'all are coders, as Bhumika mentioned earlier. You know how to solve the issue. So I'm here to show you how easy it is and that you can do it.
Perfect. And you also mentioned GSOC and outreach, so I was a bit curious about those.
Yeah, I do have a couple of slides right after this. So that was my demo. That is it. Let me.
It's too zoomed in right now.
Yeah, just a minute. I think I can just close my terminal. Doesn't matter. Yep, there we go. This is simple PR. So I had written communicate very specifically later because it's important that you communicate. If you have any issues or if you're working on something, just make sure you just let people know so that nobody else, there's no duplication of effort and things like that. This one, I knew nobody has touched it for a while. I was saving this so that I have a very small, tiny thing I can live code because I'm terrified of live coding anything big right now. So I mean, even here I made a typo, just wow. But yeah, that's all right. So that was the demo. I can wait for a few minutes if you are still working on your PRs, or if you want to submit some after the workshop, we'd love to. Yeah, I can help out anytime. So the last step was staying involved. Just a few points here, and we can talk about the outreach programs in the end. So I'm just going to give everybody just a few minutes, I guess, to, even if you are not making your PRs right now, I think it'll take some time, especially if you're building your environment from scratch. And especially if you're on Windows, I've heard people get stuck a lot. But if you're just exploring, or if you at least know how to solve it, or if you've, I'd like if folks at least, communicate it. Maybe, hey, I'm interested in this issue. Drop a message so that you keep yourself accountable on some level. But yeah, I'm going to give folks a few minutes. This is just a very basic demonstration at the beginner level, just how to create a simple PR on GitHub, right? Ah, there you go. Brian is awesome. He's just always here. But yeah, somebody will let you know if it looks good, if there's some changes, something. Other things you can help out at code triage. There's a lot of, I mentioned there's a lot of things you can do. Just so when someone submits a new issue, it usually goes into this triage label. So once you have some experience, working on 1 or 2 issues, knowing how triage is done, it will be very helpful if somebody can go through and just triage issues. Bokeh is I think it's pretty well managed, but I know of a lot of open source projects that have just so many issues they cannot keep track of them. So if that's also a very, very good avenue to help out. One thing I should have done is right after I made changes, I think I was just way too confident. But yeah, once I made some changes, I should have again built my documentation to see if it worked. But because, as I mentioned, you really can't tell directly from, but just by looking at the docs if this worked. Because our team, it doesn't, this particular issue is not prominent in this team. So, but if you, for example, changed a section, if you're working on the other issue I told you, if you're making changes to the docs, building the documentation will help there to see if everything, if it builds properly, and to see your changes directly on how it will look on the website. I actually have never used PyCharm. VS Code solves all my needs. Have you used PyCharm, Bhumika? Is it nice? I've heard it's very good, but
I've used, so like the blog ends, if you only want to work with Python, I would say PyCharm is a good idea. But if you're working with different kinds of files, then I think, and also maybe different languages sometimes, then VS Code is more universal. So it really depends on the use case. But I have used both, and I think PyCharm is just a very well-wrapped environment, whereas VS Code gives you a lot more flexibility. So, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Can I also jump in?
Yeah, sure.
The thing is as well, it depends on where you're developing. And if you're developing mostly locally and in Python, yes, indeed, PyCharm is really good for it. But for example, if you're developing locally and then you need to push something to the cloud, then in this case, Visual Studio Code has more extensions ready. So for example, while developing locally, I can run some, let's say, Azure functions, and first I test them locally, and then I want to run them in the cloud. For me, it's easier to use just VS Code extension for it. If I'm doing something related to, let's say, machine learning, I use in Azure Machine Learning Studio. Studio is the old name, Azure Machine Learning, and it allows you, for example, use your local laptop as a compute power, and then log everything you need as a Mailflow runs in the cloud. So let's say, yeah, if just local development in Python, then PyCharm is the great IDE, really great one. But if you want to do more, then Visual Studio Code is the way.
I agree. Thanks for pitching in. This will take a while. But yeah, I think let's move on. Just complete, and then we can have like a few minutes for Q&A, which is general discussions. The last step, as I mentioned, was staying involved. You saw making one PR is, that was it, but it does get complicated. Depends on the PR, depends on your experience with the project. All of that makes a difference. So end of the day, as I mentioned, it's just going in a loop, right? The next step for me is just picking another issue and working through that. So staying involved is, first off, if you just do that, or if you don't have the time to go through or solve issues, as I mentioned earlier, support, triage, all the small things, staying involved in any way you can. And stepping up after, just staying involved in this on the boundaries, getting involved in like meetings and decisions. So most projects usually, they do meet once in a while. So after you have some command over the code base, or if you think you're confident enough to, if you have to go ahead and like meet with more people, talk to them, like whenever you feel you're ready. And if you have the bandwidth, of course, you can start joining the meetings and, being in the group of people who decide the direction of the project, and you can slowly rise to that level. It's not about rivals. It's just, if you really want to do it, you can do it. And the most important part is just taking initiative and sticking around, right? Sticking around in whatever way you can. That's what I've did. And I think for almost 4 to 5 months initially, when I started contributing to Bokeh, I didn't make any PRs. Even now, I think my PR rates and issues, they're pretty minimal, but I try to help in ways I can. And for example, with outreach and making sure our sprints are organized and helping with maintaining meeting notes and stuff. So just wherever I can help out, I try to help with testing the new releases, and just small things that I know I can do. I definitely try. And anytime I do have the time and I want to solve some issues, that's always there. So staying involved is just, even if you just do the minimum, it's even the smallest of support just makes a big difference. Know that. So I think that almost sums up the entire goal of this workshop. It was to just get folks involved in open source in some way, and it's easy. You can just do whatever you can, and that's more than enough. And lastly, as Bhumika mentioned, so this is a general way to contribute. What we just saw, it's a very self-directed approach. Initially, it is a little difficult. I do understand that. Sometimes maintainers may not be as receptive to new contributors, or sometimes you may have like a few consecutive rejections, or not rejections, and like the feedback might not be constructive in some form. So it happens. It hasn't happened to me yet, but I've heard it happen. But most folks are nice, and most folks want you to contribute, and most people will help you, even if you make like silly mistakes, if you think they're silly. people will help you out. So what these programs do is they are designed to make the process easy, to make the process more accessible, and give like a complete program-ish feel to the contribution process, right? So there is a 3-month period. So you start by applying, you have dedicated mentors, which helps a lot, obviously. And you have a dedicated project to do. So you're focused on one thing, you get to, your mentors help you interact with the broader community and everything. So that's what these programs are meant to do. And the main goal is to just, first off, get more folks interested in open source and try to make them long-term contributors. So these are some programs. Google Summer of Code, Season of Talks, Outreachy. There is a Linux kernel mentorship program, if you've heard of that. And let me just have some water. And there's Rails, Curl, Summer of Code. All of these have slightly different patterns, but the overall theme is the same. If anybody's interested, you can definitely reach out to me at any time. Or if you just Google them, you can go to their website, you can read about it and start getting involved. And I think with that, I can sign off. I think I'll stop sharing and open for Q&A or just random chit chat or feedback. How did you all feel? What you've done? Things like that.
Feel free to unmute yourself and just speak. Or also go type in the chat if you're more comfortable with that. Personally, I found it very helpful, very motivating, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And I think with the time difference, it was probably a slightly bigger challenge, but it was really awesome. So thank you.
And thank you for reaching out. This was fun.
I also found it very useful. Thank you. Are you in India or in the Netherlands or?
Yeah, India. Yeah, it's past midnight for me. It's around 1.
Oh wow. Okay.
Love your slides. I know. I think I'll find and share the slide template. It should be in the credits, I think, in the last slide. Yay. Okay. Did anybody make any PRs today? Or do you have eyes on some issues that you will make PRs eventually? Or if you just want to start working on some support or triage or something, do you have anything in mind you'll be doing?
I was looking at some documentation issues, so probably get started over the weekend.
Awesome.
I found some for scikit-learn. I didn't know it was open source.
It is.
Then I found one that was a bit too complicated, so maybe I'll go for an easier one.
How's it going? Did you fix the issue? Iana?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was making PRs, but unfortunately not for open source. I'm still working, but almost done. Oh, really nice. Thanks a lot. And also about scikit-learn, there is some really talented people, and they noticed that during their everyday work, they rewrite a lot of classes for scikit-learn, So there were some, let's say, big issues. They tried to commit to scikit-learn, but like their issues were not high priority. So they say, okay, we will do our own library. So they started scikit-learn Lego. And in the beginning, like it was like 1 or 2 people working on it. But later it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's now became like a part of scikit-learn as well. Or like supported by scikit-learn as well. So I just want to say that's the power. It was just 2 people working on it. They just dedicate all their energy and efforts, and then it paid off because it's really useful. So just if you don't know, just go and check scikit-learn Lego. So it's really cool. Yep. And also the thing is a little bit unrelated to specific to the scikit-learn, but just for those who don't know, at the 3rd of February, there is a really interesting event. First of all, this year, there will be big events. Usually this event, it's called FOSDEM, takes place in Belgium. Due to Corona, this year it will be fully online. And this is the festival of free and open source software for developers, with developers. And during this event, usually there are some pre-FOSDEM sessions. And on the 3rd of February, there is a session about Python. Together with a person from PyLadies. I'm hosting the session, and we have 2 brilliant speakers. One speaker is actually Guido van Rossum. He's the creator of Python language. And another speaker, so with Guido, it will be a session, a sort of AMA session. And Bhumika right now is sharing the link to this event. And the second person is Sophie. And Sophie will be talking about the Spacie. So for those who don't know, Spacie as well open source library, it's for natural language processing. So yeah, for those who are interested, join it. And thanks for sharing links. So Pavithra just shared link for FOSDEM, and Bhumika shared link for this pre-FOSDEM event. Thanks. Pavithra, you're muted. You're saying something, but you're muted.
God, Zoom meetings. I was saying FOSDEM is pretty cool. Yeah, I'll try to attend a few if I can.
But Pavithra, have you ever visited FOSDEM before?
No, I haven't actually. No, never. So I'm actually looking forward to this time.
Okay.
I'm pretty looking forward, especially a few talks. So yeah.
Which one? I'm really curious. Which one?
I'll share a link.
Okay.
A friend of mine is also presenting, so that's also there too.
Ooh.
So.
And what this person will be presenting?
I don't know. They haven't told me. So
okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Because you mentioned scikit-learn, I'm just sharing a link to this thing I came across. I think there's a sprint coming up. So it's a scikit-learn sprint. I think it's by Reshma Sheikh.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think as well we can share, there is an organization, NumFocus. Let me share as well the link to it. And okay, everyone. And NumFocus is actually behind all big libraries that you probably work with, such as NumPy, Pandas, SkiPy. So it's also really interesting, and we have the whole organization PyData that's supporting it. And yeah, actually they're always looking for open source contributors. So don't be afraid. There is nothing really terrible about it. If you're really confused and don't know where to start, just start with simple things like fixing documentation. It's so helpful for developers. I think it's the most valuable actually contribution. It's documentation and tests. for any library, doesn't matter which one.
I'll add support as well to that list. Solving Stack Overflow questions or something. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
NumFocus also supports Bokeh. So they're pretty cool. They're awesome. Everybody at NumFocus. Which FOSS talks are you looking forward to? Do you have any recommendations? Other than the two you mentioned?
I think I can share it. I can share the link to it. Try to type simultaneously on two laptops. Okay. Hey, schedule. I think, yeah, I will just share the link. Of course, it's a Python track. Surprise, surprise. It was really interesting for me. It's actually, if you click on the link, there's the third talk. It's practical advice for using MyPy. And I'm really curious because this is usually in my pre-commit pack together with PyLadies, Flake 8, Black, iSort, and MyPy. And I usually, when I try to code, I usually use type hints. So that's why MyPy really helps me to check any issues as soon as possible before actually committing anything. So I'm really curious where it is going. CUDA, of course, GPU accelerated Python. That's really interesting. What will be there?
Yeah.
Yeah, really curious to see from Jupyter Notebook to production codes. It's introduction to Kedra. It's also, like, let's say, pop up recently. Of course, Python and Space, spicy. Yeah, that's, let's say, that's the most interesting list for me. For the rest, if I will have chance, I will take a look. Oh, and I just completely neglected, I think, the most important talk, and it's exactly improving PEEP for all users. How we improved PEEP in 2020. That's exactly what we mentioned. Everybody's using it, but nobody think about the people who maintain it. So we see, like, that there is PEEP update, the new version is coming up, but
it's huge. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Yep. Okay. I think it's a lot of information. People still digesting it, right?
Any other questions or any direction you're looking for? Just go for it now. We still have, I think, about 5 minutes. So. And this session is also recorded, so you can watch it, rewatch it at your own pace, try out the things step by step as well. So, yeah.
I think I will rewatch it just to see. I don't know what showed up like when I was on the browser and everything. So.
No, I think you had a control setup, so it was pretty good. I've had much worse show up while screen share, so you're still okay.
Okay. Not right.
Yeah, I think that's about it. And we don't have any questions so far, but thank you so much again for presenting, and thank you all for joining. And hopefully we'll see a few PRs, some contributions as a result of this workshop. So take your time, explore these things, and jump into the world of open source. And in the short term, have a nice evening. And yeah, thank you for joining.
Thank you.